Welcome back to the Autoblog Podcast. I'm Greg Migliore. We have an awesome show for you today. We're going to make this pretty simple. Formula One in Vegas, auto show in LA, some interesting news that we hope you think is interesting, and we've been driving some pretty cool cars. We'll get right to it. That means senior editor Jeremy Korzeniewski and news editor Joel Stocksdale, both somewhat fresh off planes in the last, number of hours. Let's lead off with you, Jeremy, because you literally were in Vegas 18 hours ago.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Sleep deprived, but otherwise no worse for the wear.
Max won the race, but there's a lot more than that. A lot to unpack. First race in Vegas, and you were there, so we got to kind of get into that. Joel, you're back from LA. You've been back a little more. I imagine you look a bit more rested, a little more like you've had time to recover. The LA Auto Show, pretty big deal this year. Or was it? Not really. Not so much.
It's arguable.
All right. Sounds good. How about we jump right into Vegas? So far, Jeremy, you and I have been talking about how there were free Heinekens in the streets. Sponsored by Heineken, I guess. The podcast could be sponsored by Heineken. That wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yep. I have never been anywhere in the world where there's just random promoters pulling out ice cold beers that are kept on ice and handing them to people as they walk by on the street. That literally will only ever happen in Las Vegas. I don't have a large history of attending Formula One races. I've been to a couple here and there, but yeah, I've never seen that before. Checking IDs, absolutely not. Just handing them out. I will say the downside to that, however, is great. They hand you a beer while you're walking to the race, but there were discarded half-drank beer cans everywhere as people were walking through the entrances and getting their tickets checked, because you can't take an open drink through the line. So good and bad, I guess. Lots of aluminum to recycle. So that's a funny little anecdote that kind of describes Formula One in Las Vegas, different than anywhere else. I don't think you're ever going to see, I don't think any other city has quite the same vibe as Las Vegas. And I read ahead of time that the race organizers are kind of hoping that it becomes like a tentpole event in the same line as Monaco, someplace where they've got this. Once a year, every year, they make this crazy thing and turn it into a destination event that race fans can't miss. That's what they're hoping for. It started off very auspiciously. The very first practice on the track, the very first time Formula One cars are driven at speed on their, just ridiculously expensive brand new racetrack. They get 4 laps in, and suddenly a metal drain gets pulled up out of the ground. I variously heard it was the drain itself that popped loose. I know that they were all welded shut in advance of the that's common. That's standard operating procedure when you set up a street track. They weld the drain shut. I heard, however, I don't know if it was the drain, but there was rumors that it was actually the concrete around it that failed, because it's got a metal ring, and then on inside the metal ring is the metal cap. The metal cap was very firmly welded into place. I heard that that's not what broke. I heard that the concrete that was holding it was potentially a little shoddy. So crew workers went through and checked all of the drains, like 40 drains or something that had been welded this way. I heard that the number was 8 that they decided to work on again. But the upshot of all of that was that free practice 1 was legitimately just plain canceled after 4 laps on the race. So could you imagine people? I was sitting next to somebody, his wife, they were both there, but I was talking to them. His wife spent $3,000 per ticket for the ticket and the accommodations at their hotel. which I don't recall which place they were staying at, but $3,000 a piece. They showed up there, all the excitement in the world, all the pent up demand, the energy of getting to the race. The very first time the cars speed around the Vegas track, one of them basically breaks into little bits because of poor track management and a planning problem on the Vegas GP organizers. Um, a lot of disappointment there. What ended up happening after that, they canceled first free practice 1. They announced that free practice 2 would be delayed for safety reasons, obviously, as they go and check all those metal covers. Um, I was, I was there in person. I was planning on waiting, planning on waiting, planning on waiting. They never updated us and told us, okay, this is when it's going to happen. Ultimately, I decided to get up and leave because they wouldn't let me take my laptop into the race for obvious reasons, I guess. So I had to go all the way back to my hotel room to write a story on Autoblog, detailing the cancellation. So I went back to my hotel, wrote the story up, and that's when I heard that all of the people that were there to watch the race were being told they had to leave. I don't know exactly what the situation was, but it was some sort of decision made for security and safety reasons. There was like some sort of shift change. It reminded me of, so you're sitting on you're sitting in an airplane and they say, okay, we've got a delay, we've got a delay, we've got a delay. And then they come out and tell you, okay, now the airplane staff has to get off because they passed their line on how long they're allowed to work. That's the impression that I got what was happening in Vegas. They had security people, they had police, they had to get them out of there and do some sort of shift change. And so they couldn't allow all the public and all the people to be there as security and police forces and everything were going through a shift change. So the only choice was to tell everybody they had to go. And so free practice 2 was delayed to the point that I got woken up at 3 a.m. Vegas time, so 6 a.m. Eastern, with race cars flying around the track at 200 miles an hour. At 3 o'clock in the morning is when it actually took place. So tons of irritation, tons of frustration after that first day. Every headline you see is, oh my gosh, this is a disaster. This is going to be terrible. The good news is once that was done, everything went off without a hitch. That was a terrible, terrible start. It even ended up in a lawsuit for people that paid all this money. A lot of people got tickets only for that first night. And those people were rewarded with a $200 gift card for, I think, to buy merchandise or something. They didn't want a gift card to buy merchandise. They wanted to see the racing. I'm hopeful that maybe Formula One will do the right thing and reward those people maybe with a ticket to next year's F1 Grand Prix, or something to make the situation right. Because I feel bad for the people that didn't get to go any other day and really didn't even get to see any racing action. So moving on from that, the actual qualifying was awesome. It is exactly like you see on television, except words cannot really describe the feeling of the race cars, flying by on the track. When they're trying to set fast laps, they're going all out, doing everything they can. Absolutely amazing. The race was an exciting one. A friend of mine that is such a Formula One fan, he moved to Texas to be near the COTA track. He was texting me during the race and saying like, I'm afraid it's going to be another procedural like Monaco, not going to be much passing. It was not like that at all. The on-track action was awesome. There was I think culminating in a last lap past Charles Leclerc, past Sergio Perez on the very last lap to take second place. It was extremely exciting. Cheers all over in the crowd every time there was a passing maneuver. There was only one serious accident. Lando Norris, I believe, got taken to the hospital after going off track and going into some barriers. That brought out a safety car situation. A a lot of the negatives that people were thinking did not come to pass, which is true with, when you're thinking about how things should go wrong, usually those things that could go wrong, they don't always go wrong. It's not that everything went off without a hitch, like we talked about, especially that free practice one. Um, but they were super concerned about temperatures. Turned out to be not a big deal. The only time it was a bigger deal is when the safety car came out. Temperatures started dropping in the tires. Some people, we overheard race radio people talking and saying that it's like an ice skating rink out there with those cold tires. So there was a little bit of drama, but honestly, in the end, I think what everyone's going to remember is just how good of a race it was. And I think some of the issues that really put a sour taste in people's minds early will most likely be addressed in the coming years. It's not going anywhere. They've got, I think, a 3-year contract, but they're hoping to make it significantly longer than that, make a regular stop. They built pit paddocks that are not temporary. They're built in place. They're saying that they might turn them into like a little bit of a Vegas destination for race fans, like a museum showing some things that people would want to go see when they're visiting the area. So I, it definitely was not entirely smooth, but I think it has the potential to become a really good tentpole event for the sport.
I think you mentioned like comparisons to Monaco. I think like an American Monaco would be a good like like target for Vegas. I think it really adds a dimension to the F1 calendar, obviously, especially in the United States. Um, I think strategically it's a good move, frankly, to have an event more on the western side of the country as well, despite the fact the timing was weird. I could understand some of the logic of trying to have it, somewhat appeal to the local market where you could go to a show in Vegas at 10 o'clock at night, local time. That's not unusual. And also when you kind of swing the clock forward, that's like early morning in Europe where a lot of F1 fans will be having some coffee and just getting into it like we do here.
Yep.
So I don't know.
I agree. The timing was far from ideal for those of us, traveling from the East Coast. So getting into Vegas and seeing, a 10 p.m. race start, that's literally 1 o'clock in the morning for me. There were a couple times where I saw people taking little naps in between, qualifying events on the second day. It was not an ideal time frame for me as a media person to go cover. I was absolutely exhausted. I got home and I literally slept for nearly 12 hours. Just passed out, covered me up on a lazy boy, did not open my eyes again for 12 hours. Would I go again? Absolutely. It's a super cool place. Okay. It's a neat place to see a race. To say that the city embraced it is only partially true. The city itself embraced it. Like everywhere you went, the monorails, the buses, taxis, everything, every hotel lobby was like converted into Formula One paradise. That, however, means, of course, that the people who travel to Vegas for things other than racing did not get catered to the way that they may have expected to be catered to. And we talked a little bit, Greg, earlier about this. There was a lot of commentary from workers in Las Vegas that they were promised, huge numbers of people, and they didn't see it. I think a lot of money was spent, but not a lot of money was spent on the rank and file Las Vegas kind of things that they were hoping for. So, I mean, good and bad, the city raked in a ton of money. A lot of pockets were lined with cash, just not all pockets. It was not evenly distributed. And, that was a little bit of a downer for, people who live paycheck to paycheck and rely on tips to, pay their house and rent payments. They did not see the windfall that was, rumored to happen. But a lot of money was spent. I mean, it was Las Vegas, but it was definitely Formula One City during that period.
Nice. Well said. So I think that's a good segue to talk about LA. Joel Stocksdale, news editor. He's been hanging here on the phones. Let's talk about what the LA Auto Show felt like this year. Number of interesting reveals, nothing truly mind blowing. We're talking Camry, Forester, the Ioniq 5N, which we'd kind of seen before, but we got sort of like an auto show debut in the US. That's really slicing the onion pretty thin. Lucid Gravity, that was a pretty important crossover. But you were there. We've talked a lot about through the lens of like what is an auto show these days, how Detroit felt, which was kind of okay, how Tokyo felt, which was freaking awesome, and then this. So just what was the mood like there in the City of Angels?
Well, I think Tokyo spoiled a fair number of us because that really felt like a pre-pandemic auto show. That had loads of reveals from lots of automakers. Some automakers had multiple cars shown. I mean, when was the last time that you remember like 4 sports car concepts being shown? I mean, not production cars necessarily, but like something that is very much like for and by car enthusiasts. Los Angeles was not that at all. It was, well, the fact that some of the biggest reveals are very much like mass market heavy refreshes. Toyota Camry and Subaru Forester were kind of 2 of the big reveals of the LA show, and that's just not as exciting as cool sports car concepts and off-road vehicles and things like that. The number of attendees was still felt quite high.
Okay.
So there were definitely still media there. I'm not entirely sure what public days are going to be like. It's also interesting, a number of automakers have pulled out of this. We already knew that Stellantis was pulling out. They say because of issues caused by the strikes. I don't know how much that really played a part or not, but it was definitely a noticeable absence, especially when Stellantis had what would have been possibly the biggest reveal there, the Ram Charger plug-in hybrid, or I suppose Ram would prefer us to say the range extended electric Ram, as their debut there. But Porsche bailed out of the LA show as well. They were not occupying their special little room on the LA Convention Center.
No, that's funny. That room there is quite memorable. From when I've covered the auto show there in LA in the past, it's like up the stairs, kind of in that atrium, and you're like, oh yeah, here it is. But just as a side note, insider journalists.
Yeah, and actually, because the LA Convention Center, especially for the auto show, is split kind of across 2 main halls.
Yeah.
And the one that was closest to the media center was fairly empty this time in comparison with past years. It was basically Ford, Kia, and Lucid in that one hall, and that was it. And they had sectioned off part of that hall because of the fact that there were fewer reveals over there. Now, something that was really interesting, and perhaps somewhat understandably, because the Gravity SUV really is the most exciting thing that really came out of LA, at least in my opinion, because it is just a completely new model that we haven't seen yet before. Yeah. And it's going to be a significant one for Lucid because it is a very popular body style for a much more affordable price than their sedans. But their stand was completely swarmed from basically the moment that car was revealed until the show closed. Like, there were just people crawling all over. They had a couple of Gravities on display, but even just kind of milling around in that booth, just lots and lots of people. So there was clearly quite a bit of interest and excitement around the Gravity. Something that you just did not see at any of the other booths. There was a fair bit of milling around over at Hyundai's stand, especially around the Santa Fe, which is understandable. It's a really neat SUV, but it was still a little bit of a surprise for something that was shown and revealed months ago, even for like the North American market.
What I'm curious, when you think of like you have the Forester, you have the Camry as well. Those are like a little less exciting versions of, say, like the Gravity, which was quite attractive looking, as well as the Ioniq. But those are definitely more like eat your vegetables kind of vehicles. People were interested in those, I take it. I mean, the readers on the site seem to click on them, if you will. What was the mood like there for those more like high protein vehicles?
Yeah, I think things may have been a little bit quieter around Camry and Crown, in part because Toyota didn't really have kind of a big presentation, and technically Camry and Crown had been shown just a little bit earlier in the week, and Toyota had their own big reveal event for the press. So that may have dampened that a little bit. Forester had quite a few people in attendance. And I mean, the thing is that Forester and Camry in particular are such high volume big sellers for both of those companies that they are very significant models for them. And Forester in particular getting both of them really getting hybrid models. Camry already had hybrids available, but now every Camry will be a hybrid, and they're more powerful hybrids, and you can get the hybrid with an all-wheel drive system. Forester, while they didn't actually show the hybrid there, they did announce that in a year from this new one coming out, there will be a hybrid Forester, which I think is a very important thing for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been consistently shocked that it's taken this long for Subaru to do much in the hybrid space. We've had a couple of Crosstrek hybrids, a more conventional hybrid earlier, and then a plug-in hybrid a few years back. But neither of them lasted particularly long, and the specs were always a little bit disappointing. The non-plug-in hybrid Crosstrek, that was probably the most disappointing, because the plug-in one actually did have a decent amount of electric range. Still really, really slow, but that also can describe a lot of Crosstreks the last several years.
Yeah.
But I'm glad to see that that's coming from Subaru. Oh, and actually, sort of a surprise thing was the Honda Prelude concept.
Yeah, that was cool.
On the show floor, which I had already seen in Tokyo, but it was nice to see it in the US also. And while Honda PR would not confirm one way or the other about where the eventual production Prelude will be offered, it would seem likely that it will be offered in the US if they're going to show it here as well.
How do we all feel about the news about Hyundai partnering up with Amazon?
2-day shipping for free, right? You just get your Hyundai delivered to your driveway. It's not quite that simple, but I think it's creative. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are really going to buy a car through Amazon.
Oh, I wouldn't underestimate that. I mean, just thinking of my own buying habits, I just bought a TV on Amazon because I could do it in 3 clicks. And I got an email from the New York Times Wirecutter. I subscribed to the Times. It arrived. I started flipping through it. I've been looking for a TV for a little while. They're like, this is the best TV, 4K. It was the right size. if you're somebody who likes sports, but you don't want to think about your TV experience more than you have to, add to cart, boom. It's going to arrive next week. And had I done a little more research, I could have gotten it from Best Buy quicker. It required a little more like thinking and going to the right configurations on Best Buy and I think Walmart even. But Amazon made me do it like that and it was done. So I don't know. I think people might do it that way.
Did your TV cost something in the 5-figure range?
Well, it cost $300, I think. I mean, I don't know.
There's a big difference between $300 and $30,000.
Yeah, I think we can't overlook the fact that some people just hate walking into a car dealership.
Yeah.
They don't want a salesperson trying to tell them anything. They don't want to. I think where this could prove to be successful is in the same way that now every car company has a build and price, has a, find this vehicle near you, that you can do. And those have been very popular with buyers. They want to know all the things before they walk into the dealership. Well, this is maybe even the next step. This is for the people who are like, tell me what the price is. Don't have the manager check. Don't do this. Don't have the financing person walk up to me, blah, blah, blah. If this helps take a few of those unpleasant steps out of people's mind to make it easier to buy a new car, it might be attractive to people. The same people who get their groceries delivered instead of walking to the grocery store. I'm avoiding using the term lazy. I don't mean that, but buying a car is stressful for a lot of people. If this helps, reduce their stress levels a little bit by just saying like, yeah, I picked out my car, I did this, and it's a one-stop shop. Like you can do the same thing from Hyundai's website, right? But how many people, how many people know that? You and I and people who are into cars probably know that. But I don't know. I think it could be a little bit of a coup for Hyundai to, open up this partnership, and, maybe some people will choose to buy Hyundai's for this reason, like simply because, man, I just hate dealerships. I hate car dealerships. The entire process is blah, blah, blah. Am I being ripped off? Blah, blah, blah. Maybe this will help alleviate some of that. I don't know.
Now, you can save obviously some money by being very well read into the process and negotiating. I'd like to think I saved several $1,000s just by very nicely just countering the salesperson with a lower offer the last time I bought a car, which is almost 6 years ago at this point. So it's doable. And I also was pretty well read in, having known what like the invoice price should be in like right where I thought I could push this guy and nicely and still make a good deal. I don't think everybody necessarily wants to do that. I didn't want to do it, but it was like, a means to an end, if you will. And then when you think as well, and this is where I came down, and in a TV or a microwave or whatever is different because there's so many different places you can buy these things. I guess there's a lot of car dealers too, but like you can price shop on your phone and get a pretty good sense in like 30 seconds, right? There's this thing called Google. So it is a lower stakes environment. With car purchasing, it's, even though you can dig into that, and I think you can and should, it is a little more opaque. It's a little harder to do, especially if you're not like into like reading Autoblog or reading some of the really like consumer oriented sites that have different pricing data available. Like that's not something everybody's going to do. So you might say to yourself, well, I knew I was going to spend $35,000 on XYZ Hyundai. I could do it. I think, and then it'll be ready for me at the Hyundai dealer 3 miles from my house. Maybe I could have saved a couple grand. Maybe I wouldn't have. Maybe I won't even know the difference. I think for some people, you already know the car is going to be expensive. So playing around the edges, like to me, $2,000 is like, you fight for that if you could get it, but maybe you don't know you could get it, or you don't think you can get it in these deliberations, if you will. So I don't know. Amazon is so ubiquitous. I don't think it's going to be a game changer, but I'll be very interested to see how this pans out.
I mean, I can certainly understand trying to make the buying process nicer and to avoid dealer pressure. However, I just have a hard time imagining somebody really willing to drop $20,000 to $40,000 or maybe more on a vehicle that maybe they've never like even seen in person. They're just like, oh,
Yeah.
you know what? I need a car. Well, I can just buy one here on Amazon, and I'll just buy a car. And I mean, maybe that's also partly just me just feeling like you really shouldn't buy a car that way, that like you actually should see the vehicle in person, sit in it, and make sure that it is something that is comfortable and like you actually will want to live with for multiple years and spend that level of money on, because it's a big purchase. It's, from a lot of people, the second biggest purchase that they're going to make on a regular basis, on any sort of semi-regular basis. So I'm a little bit skeptical on that front, but I could maybe see if somebody like went to a Hyundai dealer, liked the vehicle, and was like, oh, if this is a way if I can get this car, but avoiding actually dealing with the dealer, I could maybe see that.
Yeah, it's different. You know, it's a different buyer. I can't even fathom the idea of getting an entire week's worth of groceries delivered to me. I want to go to the grocery store, see what's on sale, pick out my cut of meat. You know, I still do that. You know, and to me that is, I don't want someone else picking my things out for me. But there's a lot of people who do that. I don't get it, but you know, it makes sense for certain people. I think we can't underestimate the number of Americans who view their vehicle as an appliance. Hyundai's good enough for me. You know, it's fine. I don't think they're gonna sell a lot of N branded models. Will they sell, you know, a lot of Elantras? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I could see it being much more popular on the lower end for people who are like, I need a car. This is a car. Not the people who are like, I want the blue stitching and I want the this and I want, you know, not for people who are picking out everything. It used to be super common. Like my parents, I remember we'd go to the dealership. You would pick a car specifically off the lot. You know, like, oh, we want a Jeep Cherokee. You go and you're like, yeah, we want a sport model. What colors do you have in stock? Oh, we got a red, we got white, black, and we've got teal. You walk and you look and you're like, I kind of like the teal. And you drive away in that car. So I don't know. We'll see. I think the ease at which you could potentially do shopping could be good. You and I, Joel and Greg, and probably everyone who's interested in cars enough to listen to the Autoblog podcast, we're all going to be like, holy crap, no, I would not buy a car online without sitting in it and driving it and blah, blah, blah. But there's probably enough people out there that will do that and want to do that it'll be a successful experiment, I think. We'll see.
You know who would absolutely crush with something like this, I think, is Toyota or Honda, which offer a lot of brands that have, you know, many repeat buyers. People who perhaps have purchased these vehicles just because it's a Honda or it's a Toyota, you know, that quality, reliability. It's, you know, and that's a great way to buy a car. I think it speaks to how well thought of those two specific brands are when it comes to, you know, those areas and areas where people feel like they would seek those things out, you know. And the difference, I think, between ordering a box of, you know, markers on Amazon and a car is not just the cost, but also the emotional element. And also, like, I mean, you guys know this, like, literally every car can be different. It shouldn't be, but you might get in a car and you're like, the infotainment just doesn't work on this one. And then they're like, yeah, no, we're having some issues. We see this in 1 out of 5 cars. I mean, some of the press cars we get, randomly, there's something wrong with them. You know, not too much, but it happens.
Well, and
so
depends on the brand too. If it's a Land Rover or a Jaguar, maybe more likely to just not work.
Yeah. All right. So let's That's LA. Let's do a quick rundown. I do have the editor's picks. Would you guys like to know what they are?
Yeah, breaking
All right.
news.
Breaking news. Beep, beep, beep. So in fifth place is the Toyota Crown Signia.
Mhm.
Fourth place is the Kia Sorento. Third place is the Toyota Camry. Second place is the Subaru Forester. And then in first place, by a fairly considerable margin, is the Lucid Gravity. So with that, I will toss it over to you, Joel. You were there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that matches what I was seeing.
Yeah.
Lucid had the advantage of, having the only like completely totally new thing there,
Yeah.
and that plays a big role.
What did you think? Go ahead, Jeremy.
Oh, I was just gonna say, plus when you look at the rundown of those vehicles, the Gravity is the one that stands out as like an ultimately super desirable thing. It's the coolest product. It's not the one that's gonna sell the most, but it's like one of these things is not like the others.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is not surprising at all to me.
Oh, and something else that I wanted to bring up that I thought was kind of interesting was I feel like the fact that two of kind of the big mainstream vehicles there, Forester and Camry, are not like super huge refreshes kind of feels like a sign of the industry starting to shift toward electric powertrains. Because this Camry, while it does have a significantly new front end and rear end, and they're all hybrid, it's still based on the current chassis, and you can still see that very clearly. And it definitely feels like this may be close to the final generation that's internal combustion for Camry, and probably similar for like Forester, that it feels like they're kind of running out the clock on what they've got left on these internal combustion vehicles.
Reminds me a lot of the F-150 and the Mustang that have received awards from us recently, where they were billed as very new, but then it's like, well, it's really more like a generation and a half sort of thing. I agree with you. I've noticed that for a while. I think you're spot on there, Joel.
Yeah, Mustang and F-150 are good examples. Even like Honda Accord is technically a really heavy refresh, very similar to Camry. And fortunately, a lot of these vehicles are still very good, even in their like outgoing generation. So being a heavy refresh is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does feel like a sign of like, yeah, we're kind of at the end of sort of this type of vehicle.
Cool. All right. Well, so that's Vegas, that's LA, that's buying cars on Amazon. Let's run through some other news. We've got some kind of interesting news and notes this week. UAW document, this kind of came out as part of the ratification process, that the Wrangler EV is due in 2028, and then we have midsize trucks coming in 2027. Every now and then you see this, like if you read some of the original source materials, there'll be like something just kind of in there, unrelated to say news, but it's like reinforcing, a condition of the deal. In this case, it's more like where they're going to build these things. Which we sort of knew. However, we didn't really know the timeline per se. And what's interesting to me here is, we're talking about the Wrangler EV is not going to show up till 2028. That's like 5 years from now. And then the trucks, the midsize trucks, are 2027. Now, it's the very end of 2023. These could be model years. This could be getting here a lot quicker than perhaps that sounds like on paper. Still a little bit of a hike, let's put it that way. And I think it is also interesting to have them like sort of confirm this again. So, yeah, I mean, I think an all electric Wrangler it's a great play. I mean, just taking it at face value, and then the midsize trucks. I think honestly that's a while. I feel like the way Chevy and GMC have been making these things since 14. They might want to, look at that as far as like getting Ram into that space. So, I mean, I don't know, Joel, what do you think about this news?
Well, I mean, electric Wrangler, I'm sure, is like one of those things where like like the electrification of most of the auto industry, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
And I'm not completely surprised that it might be a little bit before we get the full electric Wrangler, since Jeep does have other electric things closer on the horizon. For one thing, I'm kind of waiting to see more about the Jeep Recon. You remember that concept from
Yeah.
like just a year or so ago, that sort of like fancy Wrangler that's electric. Something a little bit more refined, a little bit more road going, but still with like removable doors and still very off-road capable. Maybe arguably more of like kind of a Defender competitor. And also a Grand Cherokee electric model, that kind of sporty high performance version that they have slated. So it makes sense to me that they would dip their toes into electric first with something that is not their prize their prize pig kind of vehicle. Like they don't they don't want to make the Wrangler people too angry too soon. Kind of get started with vehicles that don't necessarily have the very kind of set in their ways sort of crowd. Like, and also Wrangler is something that they can get away with running longer without like a super major update, because it's enough of a niche vehicle that, and has enough of kind of an image that people really really like, that can soldier on for a while. So that makes sense to me. And for the midsize trucks, that does feel a little bit far off, because I mean we'll see how long that class stays popular. Like it has definitely grown in the last several years, by all means, and is getting more competitive by the day. Which, yeah, I don't know. It does feel like that's a little bit on the late side for that particular market, since it's still dominated by Tacoma, but Chevy and Ford, or GM and Ford, are both staking bigger claims in that segment. There's only going to be so much left over to fight for, and like Jeep Gladiator already doesn't have that huge of a portion of that market, probably in part because it does have some of the compromises that a Wrangler provides. It's kind of a little bit noisier. It's a little bit more crude than some of the other options in the market. But yeah, that seems a little bit far off. But I think the Jeep plan, that makes sense to me.
I think it's pretty far off. I would love to see Jeep take electrification a little bit more seriously than they seem to be doing. I appreciate the 4xEs, the fact that they are the best-selling plug-in hybrid vehicles in the United States tells me that there's probably demand for something potentially fully electric. I think one of the problems with that is, its range is going to be an issue. When you look at the range that the Wrangler 4xE gets on its on battery propulsion alone in comparison to the size of its battery, it tells you that its miles per gallon equivalent is not very good. It's pushing a brick with huge tires and off-road tires down the road. There's a reason that every Tesla you see sits super low to the ground and isn't fitted with off-road tires. There's eco-friendly design there. So I would like to see Jeep do something with the Wrangler with better electrification. I get the delays. I think Joel is absolutely spot on that the Recon is probably going to fill that role for people who want something fully electrified in the mold of a Wrangler, which I think is really good. But I mean, you don't want to ignore the Wrangler nameplate and not give buyers an option if that's what they're looking for. The flip side of that argument, though, is it's not like any of Jeep's major competitors are running to electrify their off-roaders either. It's not, there's no rumors of a fully electric Bronco coming out. There's no rumors of a fully electric 4Runner. these off-road vehicles, and I mean, the Hummer doesn't even count because it does not play in the same class. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense that it's going to take that long. As Joel said, it's also disappointing, understandable, but disappointing to me that we're talking 5 years, 2023 to 2028. 5 years is a really long time. It'd be cool to see them prioritizing this a little bit more, especially because they've telegraphed that they're thinking about it with the Magneto concept, that they've been taken out to Moab the last several years. So it's not like it's not on their minds. I'm sure that they're, doing everything they can. But that timeline seems, that's a long time. 5 years is a long time to wait if you're a Wrangler. If you want to replace your current Wrangler but want to go electric. Yeah, that's a little disappointing, but as Joel explained why, it's also understandable.
I could also see possibly waiting that long because, as you mentioned, Wrangler is not something. It is not shaped in a way that is conducive to either good fuel economy or good electric range. And I could potentially see them being like, okay, this is going to be a real challenge for us. We might want to put that off just a little bit longer than some other options because we may want slightly better battery technology and or slightly more cost-effective battery technology to kind of develop and solidify before they launch a Wrangler, just to make sure that it has decent range and decent cost and decent efficiency.
There's probably a good chance that they're going to go down the same path that they're doing with the Ramcharger. It would make a lot of sense to not have a battery so big that you can get 300 miles of range in a Wrangler. It might make a lot more sense to be, fully electric in that the wheels are motivated solely by the, electrons and motors. However, a range extender package that might be more likely to succeed in a Wrangler type vehicle, because you're still going to be able to, they like to say, oh, unlimited range, blah blah blah. Every car is unlimited range when you say that it's unlimited after you fill it up. It's kind of a little silly marketing tactic that they're using.
But a regular EV is completely unlimited as long as you have someplace you can recharge it.
Exactly. Yeah, they're saying like, oh, unlimited range EV because it's got a gas tank. Well, an EV has a battery too. I mean, anyway. That wouldn't surprise me if can you imagine how big the battery would be in a Wrangler to give 250, 280, 300 miles? Like, just absolutely massive because they're so inefficient. But the electricity is a great way to move an off-road vehicle, super great torque. And, so there's a lot of things that make sense and there's a lot of things that make absolutely no sense. I think thinking of it as a range extended electric vehicle makes probably a lot of sense in this case.
Yeah, I could even see that maybe slipping in just a little bit before the fully electric one.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, sounds good. So let's move over to, this is a little inside baseball, but to me this is really turning into a quagmire for General Motors. The head of Cruise just stepped down. He was one of the co-founders. He took over as the CEO again about a year ago. Since that time, Cruise has been kind of a dumpster fire. They've had crashes. They've had, issues with their autonomous driving permit in California because their vehicles aren't working right. And GM has dove headfirst into this. It's an independent company nominally, but GM owns and controls it. The former president of GM, Dan Ammann, was running the company for a while. GM was really into this entity, and it is not going where I think they want it to. They've been on sort of a parallel track with Ford, which invested into another company that was called Argo, and they pulled the plug on that, Argo AI. I'm sorry. And Ford invested like $1 billion into that like 5-6 years ago. Earlier this year, Ford's like, we're out of here. We're not doing this. People don't seem to want autonomous cars. We're out of here. GM doubled down. And since that time, I don't think anything has gone right for their efforts with Cruise. So yeah, this guy like Kyle Vogt that most of you have probably never heard of, he's out. Okay. But when you look at all this other stuff going on, I mean, I don't know. To me, this seems like a really ever-growing dumpster fire. What do you guys think of this strategy, especially against the context of like what Ford has done, which at the time it didn't look great. They took a $2.7 hit, but boom, they're gone. They're free. They're in the lifeboat. Whereas GM is still, slugging away at this. So, I mean, I'll turn over the mic here, but what I'm kind of thinking is people don't really want self-driving taxis. That's a thing that's kind of dawning on me. I feel like people 4 or 5 years ago were like, it's going to be inevitable. We're all going to be doing this. And it's like, is there a purpose for it? Yes. I've ridden in these things. Some of them are very cool. Again, definitely a use case, but and it seems like the technology may be there, but like regulation is a challenge. The use cases specifically, where does this stuff actually be needed? I throw up my hands. I don't know. I mean, to me, General Motors sort of challenges in this quagmire are like a more of a cautionary tale for the industry writ large. So that's my little soapbox, actually. And I'm not against the tech either. To me, this has been a very unique dumpster fire. So what do you think there, Jeremy?
I think I am extremely unsurprised that autonomous driverless vehicles are doing stupid things like blocking emergency vehicles and driving into fresh concrete. That is like, oh, haha, that's really dumb. You got to fix this. One drags a pedestrian and kills them. That is a different matter entirely. Again, not, in my view, tragic, but also not surprising. I think we have to look at it, through the right lens too. Several years ago, an autonomous, in name only Uber, hit and killed a person on a bicycle in Arizona. That had a person behind the wheel. So it wasn't the thing that you could point a finger at the person who's supposed to be looking to take over the actual human being. In this case, there's nobody to point to other than the software. It was a mistake by the people who programmed the car. So the fact that it's blowing up into a much bigger piece where people are losing their jobs, the company's losing its right to even operate. There's no scapegoat here other than the vehicle just wasn't ready. So hey, it's not ready. Get them off the road. I do, however, believe that it is still inevitable that it's going to happen. I mean, Total Recall has told us that Johnny Cabs are around the corner for a while now. How there isn't actually a Johnny Cab company floating out there, I don't know. But it's going to come. It's just, I think we have to take baby steps to get there. I don't agree with the Tesla model of, charging people huge amounts of money, calling it beta and saying like, well, it's your fault if it breaks. You were the driver, you're the human. I don't think that's great. I also don't think it's great that we're putting these things that obviously can potentially put humans in danger on the roads. There, obviously is another flip side that indicates that these things are not terribly unsafe. Like if you look at the number of miles driven, the number of trips that they've taken, and the number of terrible mistakes that they've made, it probably is better than what humans do in that same time period. However, you have to have a no sum policy in when we're talking these devices. There isn't a human to point blame at, so the blame goes to the object itself. So sad that it happened. I hate to see that kind of thing happen. I also don't know if you don't put these things on the road, how they're ever going to get to the point where, they are fully safe and never going to make a mistake like that. But I just think we need to take a step back and slow roll this process out a little bit. Make sure that all your code is working exactly to the best degree possible before we start before we allow them to take another human life.
All right. Let's move along here to speed limiters. We'll close things out here. NTSB again reminds that speed limiter tech isn't necessarily great. There was a fatal crash that where the car was going triple the speed limit. This is interesting that they're not thrilled with how NHTSA has been handling this. So a lot of acronyms kind of fighting with each other and throwing mud. This was a Charger in Vegas, one of the crashes anyway, was doing 103 and it hit a minivan. So that was not good, obviously. Although the driver there was found to be having used drugs, which I think that obviously was perhaps an even bigger factor than any speed limiter. This has been a pretty big debate. Whenever we do stories on these things, they get a lot of comments. People tend to click on them. It's obviously a bit of a spicy issue. So.
Yep, a spicy issue for sure.
Do you have a position on that, Jeremy?
Well, I mean, do I have a position on speed limiters? I don't think anyone needs to be in a car driving 103 in a 35.
Nor do I.
That's excessive. That is throw the book at them. Especially they're high on drugs. Tragedy is a good reason to take a look at it. I don't think anyone needs to be doing that. I also don't know how there's a side of me that says, oh, I don't want computers controlling my car and telling it what it can and can't do. But I also am not naive enough to realize that it does that already. Every car that you buy today nudges you in your lane properly. It slams on the brakes when it thinks you're gonna, hit someone or something. I don't know. I don't know how you implement it. I don't know how you say double the speed limit, 70 is okay, but triple the speed limit, 100, that's not okay. And who makes that decision? And then the other thing is I don't think anyone needs to be doing 103 in a 35, but if you live out in the middle of nowhere and you have somebody who's bleeding out in your car and you're trying to get them to the hospital as soon as possible, do I want my car telling me how fast I can drive if I, as a human, deem that, I'm not putting any lives at risk other than, my own? I don't know. I don't have a strong take or read on it. I would love to see how how they think they're going to implement this properly, and not take away rights from people that they currently enjoy, and doing it in a way that makes sense. I don't know. Joel, thoughts?
Yeah, it's tricky to know exactly what the best move there is, because I know that like you said, there's a part of me that's like, I don't necessarily like the idea of having the outright performance of my vehicle limited. I don't know. I mean, it's maybe kind of a selfish and dumb idea, but yeah, there it is. I don't know. Maybe it's kind of kind of an American thing where it's like, don't infringe on my freedom. But also, I mean, there's no reason for you to really ever be doing more than 90 miles an hour maximum on any kind of US public road, because I think the highest interstate speed limits are 85. I think there are a couple of 85 mile an hour speed limits in Texas and Montana. So I don't know. I guess I could maybe almost see a cap at 90 miles an hour, provided that there is a way to switch it off, like for on-track kind of driving, because I mean that's still a thing that people do. It's definitely a small group of people, but being able to disable that at certain times. Obviously, that runs into the issue of like how easy is it to defeat? Like, does it need to be geofenced? Which that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable from a kind of general privacy kind of thing. I mean, I don't necessarily want that kind of info. I mean, private companies probably have most of that information anyway, just including the car companies particularly, but also like Google, Apple, etc. Though I can potentially see with like geofence stuff being a bit of an issue when, say, there's construction going on and maybe like the speed limits have been updated and that hasn't been changed on the car. That could go either way. Either the construction is done and the speed limit is back up and now your car is stuck at a certain speed, or at kind of too low of a speed, or the other way around where like that hasn't been updated and there is construction but you're still being allowed to go like 30 miles an hour above the speed limit. Or from just a practicality standpoint where the flow of traffic is still moving much above the construction zone speed limit, but because your car has the limiter, it's keeping you right at that limit, and you're now becoming a problem on the road that could potentially create a more dangerous situation because you're going much slower than everybody else, and closing speeds are a very big factor. Whereas like if you were to have like if somebody rear ends you at 80 while you're doing like the construction zone limit of 50, that's way worse than if it was like 80 into like your car doing like 70 or something. It's a really complex thing. I think a surprisingly complex thing, and I don't know that there's necessarily one good or easy or right answer.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a correlation. Obviously, I haven't looked up this data, but I wonder if there's a correlation on accidents citing excessive speed and people who have a history of, have a very poor driving record. Maybe there's a way to install speed limiters on cars for people with a history of, getting caught speeding, and is that like a first step? I think there'd be a lot more public acceptance to something like that. Like, you get a speeding ticket, okay, fine. You get a second speeding ticket, they say, okay, you pay a big fine here. And if you get a third speeding ticket, your car's going to get a limiter on it. I think there'd be a lot more public acceptance to something like that than a just, de facto every car comes with this, and, some bureaucrat decided what it was going to be and how it was going to work. So maybe there's something there.
Yeah, that actually sounds very interesting. I think I was listening to something not long ago that did suggest that there can be a lot of correlation. Like if you are racking up lots of driving infractions, there's a much higher chance of you being in some kind of accident of some sort, potentially involving excessive speed. That's a really interesting idea. I kind of like that, and that would definitely, I think, fit a lot of Americans' perspective of like, I didn't do anything. Why should I have to?
Yeah, right.
Why should I have to
pay the price for other people's mistakes?
Yeah. Even if it doesn't necessarily affect you that much in practice, but it's kind of the principle of it.
Yep.
I did not think you guys would have these measured and thought out, even as you're thinking about takes on this. I thought this would be a throwaway thing to end up the news section, but
are you saying that are you saying that we're either unreasonable or flippant? I'm not sure.
Maybe both. I don't know, a little bit of both. But hey, you had opinions stronger than I did.
It's hard not to be a little bit, have a little bit of a nuanced take on this. Like, do I want my car to have a speed limiter? No, but I also haven't gotten a speeding ticket in a decade. So I don't think that I really have this issue, but I see a lot of people doing stupid things on the roads that maybe they should have one in their car. I don't know.
And kind of along those lines, I think, I mean, there's definitely a difference between doing, say, like 80 in a 70 as opposed to like
For sure.
50 in a 30, like in a residential area. I It's not necessarily like outright top speeds, but like what the speeds are in certain contexts and things. Like,
For sure.
I mean, like doing like 50 in a 20 or a 30 is like in a residential area where there's lots of pedestrians is a much, much bigger thing than doing like 75 or 80 on the interstate where there isn't necessarily pedestrian traffic. Lots of people are also moving at fairly high rate of speed.
Yeah.
So it's a complex issue, actually.
Alrighty then. Let's move along to the reviews section. Over an hour into the show, we're going to keep this short because I think we're reaching the limits to, even with this is a long holiday weekend, we're recording this on a Monday, which is very unusual for us. We're going to probably get this out a little bit early. Hey, maybe you're driving to see family this weekend and you need some more at Autoblog Podcast. We're there for you. That being said, we'll try to keep this fairly tight here. We are going to talk about the Trax and the Genesis G90. So I will let Joel, you drove the Trax, right? Let's hear about it.
Yeah, so I got a little bit of time in the Chevy Trax, thanks to our West Coast editor, James Riswick. I was visiting with him a little bit during the LA Auto Show, and he had a couple of vehicles coming in from the fleet. And, well, both of us, honestly, thoroughly impressed by the Trax. I really like it. It's a really good little SUV. I've been seeing them a lot lately around here because, domestic cars sell well in Detroit. And I've been impressed with how they look. It's proportioned really nicely. It looks low and wide, and like it's a good looking vehicle. And I'm very pleased that it drives quite well too. I was really impressed with the chassis. It's really stiff and tight, and it's responsive, it handles well, it rides well. The steering's a little numb, like I'd like a little bit more feedback there, and I'd also like to have paddle shifters available for it. But that aside, I mean, it's a spunky little 3-cylinder. It feels much punchier than the numbers would indicate because it's got good torque. It's not like a barn burner of any sort, but it keeps up with traffic well. It has a kind of a nice little growl to it without being like rough and coarse and annoying, even like at higher RPM. It's an impressive little car that it's stylish, it's affordable, it's well equipped, it handles well, it rides well. It's a really excellent little vehicle. I'm very happy with it.
Okay. The big thing for me was the styling. I remember seeing them because, again, this is Michigan. Like, you see a lot of cars, development mules, and then pre-pros, and then just the cars usually get out and people buy them sooner than perhaps other parts. It's a pretty good looking car. I mean, I drove the first generation Trax in a preview drive. I think this was in upstate New York, around the New York Auto Show, and it was not great. And I never have been very impressed with the car, just for its driving dynamics or its appearance. Even I don't think it's a great value. I wouldn't call it a flat out penalty box, but I've never really said this is the car you should go get. But right now, I think it looks great. And based on what you're saying, it sounds like it drives pretty well.
Yeah, and I think it would be a great basis for if Chevy wanted to expand the line a little bit and offer like an SS with more power and maybe those paddle shifters and slightly sportier suspension. I think it would be a great base for something like that. I'd even love to see like hybrid or electric versions of it. In a lot of ways, I kind of feel like if the Chevy Bolt EV looked like the Trax, they would have been selling way more of them because it's an attractive looking thing. The Bolt, much as I love it, and it is cute in some ways, it also looks a little dorky, and I think a lot of people felt that way. The Trax actually looks sporty and aggressive and fun and playful. So I would love to see it expand in some ways, both kind of performance and possibly electrification wise. I know that would add some cost, but I think they've got a strong base here. And, as long as they still have kind of entry level stuff, that would be great. And maybe the fact that it must be fairly cheap to make would hopefully make other versions of it be comparatively affordable to other vehicles on the market.
All right. This is somewhat affordable, so we'll transition over to the Hyundai Ioniq 6. I just drove it last week and came away pretty impressed. Really, the better authority on this is actually Joel. You did the buying guide on it. You drove it. I guess this was when, I'm not sure when you drove it, but you drove it fairly recently. And, you get some pretty competitive range. The one I tested was just under $47,000, so not cheap. Really attractive car. I thought it really looked like it was from the future, almost even more so than the Ioniq 5, which it sort of shares the same genetics and electrical components and underpinnings and all of that good stuff. It really makes the case for the car, though. Like if you want a swoopy, almost old school, like tell me if I'm taking this too far, but I would almost say it's like an Art Deco teardrop design going back to the 30s. And I think they were going for that. But I was very impressed with it. It drove very well. I really enjoyed my time in the car, to be honest. So it, definitely the kind of thing that stood out for the neighbors, that's for sure. I thought it was a little tight inside. That was, and I'm not the tallest guy in the world, but it's a little tight to get in and out, especially when you're trying to trying to get my 5-year-old in and out of the back seat. He's not a big guy. It was a little tough to get everybody in and out of there. But it's a car, not a crossover. So I really liked it. I really did. What did you think of it when you drove it earlier, Joel?
I'm a huge fan of the Ioniq 6. It's, I think, really pretty, really distinctive. I think you're dead on with kind of the 30s Art Deco kind of vibes. And that pays big dividends on range. It's one of the most efficient electric cars you can get in the United States because it's just so slippery. And sort of the side effect of that is, as you noticed, the low roofline, particularly for the rear. I didn't find the front seats to be too difficult to get in and out of, and I felt like they had reasonable headroom, but the back seats, it does feel a little bit close back there, and I didn't open up the back doors that often, but I can imagine that the entry can be a little bit tight, especially if you're putting in a car seat. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the old Chrysler 200 that had a really horrible rear door opening because of that super swoopy, low rounded shape. I don't think the Hyundai is that bad, but it is a trade-off. One of the things that I really like about the Ioniq 6, though, is that, and I've talked to John Snyder about this too, that he noticed it too, that the suspension is a little bit firmer and a little bit stiffer than the Ioniq 5. And I would even say compared to the EV6. And I felt like that contributed to a kind of sportier overall feel than those other eGMP cars, which I quite liked.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually a really interesting take. I'm not sure if I would say it was noticeably different, but I definitely see where you're going with it. And yeah, I when people ask me like, hey, what EV should I get? Inevitably, I mention 2 or 3 of these sort of siblings. Hey, you might want to look at this. And that can be a tough sell, especially in like a domestic leaning Midwest. Frankly, these cars have all been on sale for longer than, anything but the Mach-E, I guess. But Chevy's EVs are still slowly getting out there. But if you're looking for something, I mean, these are, I think, very compelling. Again, I think the EV6 is perhaps the most like well-rounded because it's a crossover, but it's also got that kind of like car-like vibe. And then the Ioniq 5 is that's not going to be necessarily for everybody with that kind of Tron-like thing. Then the Ioniq 6, you get more of the car sort of vibe. So perhaps, among these three, it might be the right car for you. I would say if you're an EV buyer, as you're benchmarking against the Mach-E, the Volkswagens, the ID, all the different IDs you could get at this point, the ID4, the more of them that are on the way, of course, the Chevy ones and, the other ones too. So I came away impressed. It was cool. It was a cool car to drive. It really was.
Mm-hmm. And I love all of the details on the interior and the exterior. It feels very unique and futuristic.
Indeed. All right. So that's all the time we have this week. I think we gave you guys your calories this week for a long podcast. Hope you enjoy it over the holiday weekend. Happy Thanksgiving. Be safe out there, and we'll see you next week.